Last night's episode of Monday Night Raw made Bron Breakker look like an idiot, and before you get mad at me, let me explain. Welcome to Allison Analysis. I'm Ben Allison, and I've analysed last night's episode of Monday Night Raw, and here are my 5 key findings. But before we get underway, if you could like and subscribe, that would be very much appreciated. In at number 5, Liv and Dom need to defeat the Terror Twins at Bash in Berlin. Talking about people who've been made to look like idiots in recent weeks, Liv and Dom certainly have. But for them it's fine, because they're meant to be idiots, right? They're meant to be the heels. They're not meant to be as good as Damian Priest and Rhea Ripley, so it makes sense. But at the same time, this is a new version of Judgment Day. It's a version of Judgment Day without Damian Priest and Rhea Ripley, who are probably their 2 biggest members, so this faction needs to look strong. And so far, since they've debuted, well, they just haven't looked strong. Damian Priest and Rhea Ripley keep getting one step up on them, which again, so far is fine. But at Bash in Berlin, Liv and Dominic Mysterio need to get the win, and it can be by cheating. In fact, it probably should be by cheating, but they need to win. If they don't, they'll not only look like idiots, but they'll perform like it too. And I can already see it now. The excuse is, oh, Liv Morgan is champion, she can't look weak. But we know that's not the case. She obviously can look weak. And you can always run it back. You can always find a way to get to Liv versus Rhea too. And Ripley and Damian Priest, I mean, both of them can take a loss as long as it's not clean, right? Them taking a heelish loss, it'll be completely fine. But just as long as Dom and Liv do get the win, because they need it. But I'm not entirely sure how I'm feeling about this faction so far, because I thought they were going to be a little bit more dominant than they have been. I thought they were going to be a bit less comedy than they used to be. But nope, it's still a lot of the comedy stuff. They still look weak a lot of the time, but hopefully the results will be there for them. In at number 4, waiting until now to add Ivy Nile to American Maid was definitely the right decision. As we know, American Maid's first feud was with the Wyatt Six, and if there's one way to quickly lose momentum, it's being in the ring with those guys, because they are so over and so talented, and also a new faction, so it just took all the wind away from American Maid out of the gates. And that did make me worry just a little bit, because despite the fact I love the Wyatt Six, and I love the way that their debut went down, I felt bad for American Maid, because I think they have so much potential. But now adding Ivy Nile to that faction, following that feud, it's like a coat of fresh paint, and it's a brilliant move. You could argue that Ivy Nile was the missing piece, and now they're like a main event faction or whatever. There's just something that you can argue, and you can move on into their feud with the Alpha Academy. I really do think that American Maid can be a top faction in WWE if they are booked right, if they are used right, essentially, because the Creed brothers, they are such a good tag team. They are so underrated since getting called up to the main roster. I'm going to be honest, I've been shocked at how badly they've been booked since getting called up. On the Wrestling Republic's daily broadcast over the last few days, we've spoken at length about tag team wrestling, the state of tag team wrestling. I think they're a perfect example of it. They should and could have been used better than they have been. But it's not like they're buried already or anything like that, right? They can bounce back, and this new gimmick is certainly a great way to start. In fact, with this new gimmick, I'm certain that they're going to become tag team champions, and I cannot wait to see it. My only concern about this is now Ivy Nile's there. I hope the Wyatt Six aren't going to come back and like Nikki Cross is going to feud with Ivy Nile and all that, because that would just kill all the momentum that American Maid have. In at number 3, it's time to strap in for Drew McIntyre versus CM Punk 2. Last night on Monday Night Raw, it became clear that Drew McIntyre and CM Punk are heading towards a strap match, and I for one cannot wait for it. For a feud this brutal with so much hatred between the two men, it's the perfect stipulation. Sometimes in wrestling, the most violent matches aren't the one where there's weapons, but are the ones where you will literally just tie to your opponent for the entire match. They're so close to you, because if it's somebody you hate that badly, well, it's just going to be pure violence, and you can't even escape if things aren't going your way. It's a whole different type of match, and I can't wait for it. What was interesting was that Drew McIntyre came out to confront Gunther and Randy Orton. Of course, we know that McIntyre has a lot of history with both of these men, but could it mean that McIntyre is going to be going after the world title very soon? If CM Punk does beat Drew McIntyre at Bash in Berlin, I'm beginning to think that at Bad Blood, it won't be a Hell in a Cell match between those two, and instead, the Hell in a Cell match will be between Roman Reigns and Solo Sikoa, and at the event, Drew McIntyre will be facing CM Punk, but he will be facing Gunther too in a triple threat match for the World Championship. I personally think I would prefer McIntyre versus Punk in a Hell in a Cell, but hey, both are good options, and I'm beginning to think that's where they're going. Because we know in this Triple H regime, nothing is coincidence, nothing is by accident. The fact that Drew McIntyre came out to confront Gunther, that was going to mean something. In at number 2, Odyssey Jones has been what New Day desperately needed. I'm gonna be honest here, right? I have not been interested in the New Day for a very long time, at least a year. But suddenly I am once again, and that is all thanks to Odyssey Jones, or more specifically his role within this story. Because all throughout the Final Testament storyline, I did not believe for a second that Xavier Woods was actually going to turn on Kofi Kingston. But suddenly I think it's a possibility. I mean, this can go one of two ways, I think. Either Odyssey Jones joins the group, which I'd be all for, or Xavier Woods turns on Kofi Kingston. Either one is better than what they're doing now, which is just Kofi and Xavier Woods doing nothing together. And in at number 1, Bron Breakker looked like an idiot last night on Raw when he beat Sami Zayn. Now you might think I'm crazy for saying somebody looks stupid or like an idiot when they've won a match, but I'll explain why. And to do so, let's go back to Money in the Bank. Because at Money in the Bank, Sami Zayn defeated Bron Breakker. A move which I didn't like at the time. But I was like, okay, the story is here that Bron Breakker underestimated Sami Zayn. Bron Breakker then promised us that he was never going to underestimate Sami Zayn again. And around comes SummerSlam, and he doesn't underestimate him. He does beat him. But then, 2 weeks later on Raw, he breaks his promise because he underestimates him again. Within 5 minutes, Sami Zayn pins Bron Breakker. He gets the first fall. I'm sorry, this is ridiculous. Bron Breakker should be looking near impossible to beat, and the only way in which he can be beat is if he underestimates you or something like that. But he's already made that mistake with Sami Zayn. He said he wouldn't do it again, and then he did do it again. In my opinion, if it had to be a 2 out of 3 falls match, I would have actually done it 2-0 to Breakker. But if they really wanted Sami to get a pinfall, it should have been the second one, and it should have been by roll-up or something like that, or by some unlucky thing, or just something, right? Just something to protect Bron Breakker a little bit more, but not being pinned in the first fall within 5 minutes. And I'm not going to exaggerate here, right? This hasn't ruined Bron Breakker, or ruined the title reign, or anything like that. It hasn't. He can recover from this easily. But they just need to be a lot more careful with how they're booking who will probably be the next face of their company. Because if you regularly book him like this, where he's making promises, he's failing to keep those promises, he's not going to seem to fans like a main event star. But anyway, do you guys agree? Do you disagree? Let me know in the comments down below, and let me know your thoughts on last night's episode of Raw. Please like and subscribe as well. They're very, very much appreciated. And I will be back on Friday to talk to you guys about some SmackDown. See you guys then. Peace.